Okay, I think we're going to kick off the session. So, hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Mastering Critical Data Elements, Governance Strategies, Best Practices. My name is Frances Schultz, and I'm an account manager here at Alation. I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping for today's session. We do want to make the session as interactive as possible, and we'll have some time at the end of the session for your questions. Throughout the session, if you have any questions that come up, or if you would like to hear anything from our panelists, please use the Q&A section in your webinar tool. We will get as many questions answered as we can towards the end of the session. In addition, please note the session will be recorded and we'll share the recording with you over the coming days. With that said, I'm going to introduce and hand it over to our host and moderator, Chad Baranze, award-winning data governance expert and co-founder of DGX, as well as Luke McLaughlin, Senior Solutions Engineer at Alation. Over to you two.
Chad, we'll get you to click go on stage. There we go.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I've got that bit there. Let's go to the intro slide for DGX, Luke.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So yes, thank you, Francis. It's great to be here. So today we're here to discuss CDEs, and so we'll be talking about how we can identify them as well as govern them. So it is a very important topic, especially with the introduction of CPS 230. So I'm sure all the FSIs will be definitely talking about CDEs and how to identify and govern them. So before I dive into the presentation, I just want to share a little bit about myself and DGX. And so, as mentioned, I'm currently the co-founder of DGX, which is a data governance consultancy based in Australia. And so at DGX, we're super passionate about data governance, and so we host events, we do webinar and training like the one today. And we also provide data governance advisory. So if you need help with your data governance journey, feel free to reach out. And so over the years, I've had the privilege to work with some fantastic organizations in Australia, so banks and super funds. And so I've got to see firsthand how CDEs can really anchor your data governance program as well as help prioritize effort in the data governance space. And so it's not just me that thinks CDEs are a good thing. It's also our regulators. And so APRA specifically has been working with the banks really over the last 7 years to refine the approach to managing data risk, and really CDEs are absolutely core to that. And so if you are APRA regulated, I would be making sure that you 100% are making sure that you've got CDEs really, the CDEs are a core part of your data governance approach. So in terms of going to the next thing, we'll jump into the CDE framework. So on the screen now is DGX's CDE framework. So we believe this really represents the gold standard of implementing CDEs. And so, as mentioned, we've worked at banks, we've worked at super funds, we've been audited, and so this is really a culmination of that view of what is best practice when it comes to identifying, managing, and governing CDEs. And so I like to break this framework down really into 3 steps. And so the first one is really identifying it. So it's picking a domain in your business and really getting a handle of what data is critical for that business. Once you have a view of that, then it's about formalizing it. So it's about defining definitions, really defining why it's important, and then formalizing that with your key stakeholders, your data owners. And then once you have your CDEs, it's really about putting them under governance. And so when we talk about putting CDEs under governance, we're really talking about, 1, implementing data lineage, which is really a key part. 2, really understanding and assessing risk across that lineage and that life cycle. And then 3, implementing data quality controls. So data quality rules, issues management, and getting visibility of your data quality health. And so let's deep dive the first 2. So 1 and 2, the identifying and formalizing CD. So let's flick to the next slide, Luke. Excellent.
There we go.
And so on the screen now is our 3-step process to identify CDEs. And so, as mentioned before, I think you really want to sort of start with one domain first, and for kind of work out the kinks first. But essentially, what you do is, firstly, we want to identify. We'll pick a domain, engage your stakeholders, and then really understand what data is driving their business. And so to do that, we're really asking for, what key reports they use. Do they have any regulatory reporting? So potentially getting a copy of those and understanding what they need to do for that. And then the first one on the list there is understanding their critical operations. And so that one is really important, and it really ties back to the CPS 230 work that's going on at the moment, where organizations need to identify all their critical operations. And so I call that out because as a part of that work and a key input into a critical operation is data. And so as a part of that work, your teams who are driving that CPS 230 work are already going around and mapping critical operations and trying to understand the data that's input to that. So you really want to piggyback that, and that really is the linkage between CPS 230, I think, and CDEs. And so once you have a view of that, and really, I think, it's getting access to these things. So if it's a report, well, give us a copy of it. If it's a critical operation, let's walk through it. What data is being input into the system, etc. And once you have that, then you're really starting to form a list of like a register almost of data elements. You're really getting that list of, okay, customer name, address. These are important data. So once you have that, then it's time to work out which ones of those are critical. And so to determine which is step 3, which is to do that, it's really a risk assessment. So what we do is we take that CD and then we ask a question with our stakeholders, and that the question that I like to use is that if 20 to 30% of this data was made unavailable or was impacted by a data quality issue, what would be the impact to the organization? And so you really need to leverage your organization's risk impact matrix, which most will have, and you basically do that question, and then you work out what is the impact going to be if this data is impacted, and for it to be a CDE, you're really looking for the answer for that question to be higher severe. So really the upper end of your impact matrix. So we're really talking about a catastrophic event to the organization. And so if it meets that, then you're dealing with a CDE. And so once you have that, then I should say in that process of doing that risk assessment, it's really good to bring your key stakeholders into that. So your data stewards, your owners, as well as the risk team. And so you really want to be clear around that rationale. So it's really important to document that rationale as to why those data is important. It's also important to document who are the owners, the definition for that CDE, and that really formulates your CDE register. So the final bit there is to populate your CDE register with all this information, and then formalize it with your stakeholders. So in the past, I've usually got the data owners, the accountable person, and so that data owner is usually at an exec level, and that data owner approves the CDE. And then we also, if you've got a governance council, it's good to ratify that with the governance council as well. What I'd say is it's really, in terms of identification, it's really good to have a systematic approach to identifying CDEs instead of just taking a list of data elements from one place. You want to go to each business area, so each domain, and do the exact same thing. You want to have a systematic approach to going through and understanding that data. And by doing that and doing it in a systematic way, you really get that full view of what data is used and where. And so obviously data is going to be used in multiple places in your organization. So by doing it in a systematic way, you get that view. So you know that customer name is used in XYZ reg reporting or XYZ critical operations, and it really gives you that full view. And so with that, then you can really understand if data is impacted, you've got that view of what's the impact. So we know that it's all these things are going to be impacted if that report is or the data is there's any issues with that data. So that's probably really all to mention here. I'm going to hand over to Luke now for him to show us how you can document and manage your CDs within Alation itself. So over to you, Luke.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. So yeah, let's take a little look at how we practically apply this in Alation and start bringing our CDEs under governance. I'll switch over to my environment. Cool. So you should all be able to see my Alation instance now. I'm looking at my CDE register that I've set up for my organization. Today we're just using a made-up organization called Acme Bank, just for the sake of the example. So it's a banking example, lots of sensitive data in bank, lots of critical data elements. So we sat down with our various domains and gone through and documented our CDEs. So this is my CDE register. I've got a couple CDEs identified so far. For example, I've got my account number, address, date of birth, credit card details, customer ID, account holder name, are just a few of the CDEs we've started going through and identifying. I've also got this nice completeness report as well, so I'm able to track and manage how thoroughly have we curated, cataloged, identified each CDE as well, which is helping us track our progress towards governing our CDEs. Because end of the day, data governance is a journey. It's about progressively getting things under governance and improving that over time. You're never going to get it, 100% out the gate. There's always going to be things to tweak and improve over time, and that's perfectly fine. It's reporting and tracking on that progress that's really important. I know that's certainly something APRA looks for when you get audited by them. They want you to demonstrate meaningful progress towards tracking, managing your CDEs. Let's drill into the customer ID CDE here. So I can hover over that and let's go view that CDE. So I got a great, really clear definition of what customer ID is to our organization, how it's defined. I've got linkages to key terms like customer here. So this is in our glossary term of how we define customer as a bank. So I can view that there. I can click through to that as well. But I've got the nice little hoverovers, which is really handy. I've also got linkages to what data governance policies apply to here. So I have a big, very detailed policy about how we manage CPS 230 and CPG 235 compliance in particular, and all the controls and measures we put in place to help us manage that. Going back to our CDE, back to our customer ID CDE, I've also got key classification here. So we know that customer ID is sensitive to us, it's confidential, it's verified as PI, and it's not enterprise reference data in this particular case. I've also got very clear ownership. And this ownership structure can vary. Every organization does it slightly differently, have slightly different names for what are their owners, what are their stewards, are they data owners, domain owners, steward owners? And you can have all that variation in Alation, where we allow for custom fields and tailoring of these names so you can adapt it to whatever your organizational structure is, ownership-wise. So I've got clear ownership, clear stewardship. I know who to reach out to if I need to ask more about this particular CDE. Then coming to the risk side of thing, how do I understand what risks and controls have been applied and to this particular CDE? I've got my risk and controls here. So I can see here that I've got 3 risks that have been identified and they've got multiple controls each that have helped us mitigate those. But if I take a little look at my data risk register here, I can see we've gone ahead and documented what our risk matrix is, as you would expect, pretty standard 5x5 risk matrix. And I've got a whole bunch of 21 different risks that we've used to assess our CDEs by. So for example, let's say I'm interested in some of our data quality risks. I can have a look through here, filter down for my quality risks. Great. I've got these data quality related risks here. Let's take a look at our risk one, which is a high risk, incomplete data. Incomplete data is a real risk to us. If we don't have complete customer IDs, that would be a real problem, as it's a really key identifier for us. Again, got clear documented potential impact, likelihood, impact rating, risk scores, making those risk scores really apparent in the name here as well. I can also then track, when was this last reviewed? Do we have a review schedule? All that good governance you want to put around managing policies, risks, and controls. Over here, I can see which controls relate to this particular risk. So I can see here that doing data quality checks is one of the controls we use to mitigate incomplete data. So if I check out that control, I can see here, what does this control do? It mitigates these potential risks. And which CDEs is this control applied to? Well, I can see here, it's linked to that customer ID CDE, and actually most of our CDEs, as you would expect. Having that clear linkage between the CDE record, which think of it like your governance card, that documents the CDE, what it is, where it is, and links out to all the other referential information you need, like your risk register, your controls, your policies, all of that, makes it really easy to centralize your organization's understanding of your CDEs in general. And Chad, I'll hand back to you and we'll take a look at our next section.
Excellent. And so Luke's taken us through really, how you can document and start managing your CDs in Alation. So now we're going to talk about how you can put them specifically under governance. And so what I'd say is the data lineage or implementing data lineage for your CDs is really a crucial part of managing your CDs, and it's really important because it gives us an understanding of how data flows through the organization. And we want to know that so we can really understand the risks across that journey. And so in terms of lineage, there's really two types that we work with. We've got business lineage or high-level lineage, and then technical lineage. And so business lineage gives us that high-level view of the data flow or the system-to-system hops of data within the organization. It's usually end-to-end. So it's all the way from how data comes into the organization, how it gets into the system of record, all the way through to how it gets into the critical report or operation. And so business lineage is really important because it helps us understand, the system of record. So is there multiple system of records? Is there one? But most importantly too, it gives us that view so you can really do that risk assessment. So really sitting down with your risk teams to say, hey, do we have a risk? So Luke took us through some of that in Alation. So it helps us really do that activity with our stakeholders and assign those risks and work out where we do have problems. And so from an APRA perspective, they are really interested in organizations being able to demonstrate that they've mapped lineage. So in terms of any audit I've done, business lineage has always come up, and it's really the foundational piece to understand or implementing governance for your CDs, because to properly govern them and manage risk, you really need to understand that end-to-end flow of how it flows in an organization. So it's really important that you focus on business lineage and you really understand how to do it, and you map it out for your CDEs. And then on the other hand, we've got technical lineage. So technical lineage is really just the technical data transformations that your data goes through. It's usually done within the data platform. So, Snowflake, Databricks, it's usually done within that. And it's usually from source to report. So it's looking at, it's important because if you've got reg reporting that's being produced out of the data platform, well, to answer that question, where do we source this data? What sources, what tables? Technical lineage really gives us that view, and you can really track it back. So really to do lineage properly, you really need to, it's a combination of the two, right? It's business lineage to give you the end-to-end, but it's also technical lineage to give you the technical view of how what were the actual source of the data. So what we'll do now is we'll take a look at how you can implement business and technical lineage in the Alation tool. So Luke, I'll hand over to you again to take us through it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, so business lineage and technical lineage, they are challenging because they're both lineage, but they're very different views of lineage. Business lineage being that more aggregate view of lineage here. So we're still on my CDE record here for customer ID. And I've got links to our business data lineage and separate links to our business technical lineage with nice little overview summaries. So I can click through and go take a look at that business lineage. So if we go to, here we go. Here is my business lineage for our customer ID CDE. So here we can see our system of entry on our left-hand side. Make it a little bit bigger for the audience. So we can see here customer ID is brought in via some third-party APIs, also via our mobile app as a bank, and also, of course, we bring in a lot of data from our website. Those then flow either into our core banking system or our CRM, in this case Salesforce, which is our system of record. I can then see that flowing into our data platform. In this case, the bank has chosen Databricks as their data lake, but it might be Snowflake, might be SQL Server, might be any technology that you happen to be using for your data lake and data warehousing. And then from there, I can see also how are we using this data, what reports and dashboards this is being using in. And I can see this is used in a number of Power BI reports and a number of Tableau reports. So it's giving you that really high level aggregate view and a really simplified understanding of how does this CDE flow across our enterprise? How does it come from customers directly at system of entry? Which systems and source systems does it land in? Where is our core data platforms and where are our core reporting platforms? Now, we can contrast that to technical lineage, which, as the name implies, is a bit more technical. It's an exact representation of our data pipeline down to the table and column level of detail. And when you think about a CDE, customer ID, you have one customer ID CDE, but there may be thousands of instances of the customer ID column or data asset used across your technical lineage. So it's a much more complicated view of the world, but it's a very important view, particularly for data engineering, data scientist personalities. It helps us understand how data flows through our environment. So at a high level here, I can see that our customer ID is originally sourced from our Salesforce CRM. It then flows into our data lake and it goes through a medallion architecture. So I can see it's going through customer bronze, silver, gold into some of our gold layer tables here, off which we have a number of reports being built off it. We can see here I've got 2 specific Power BI reports and dashboards that are using the customer ID CDE. I can even break that down to a column level of detail as well. So I can trace lineage right down to a column level of detail. Now, what I can also start doing is I can start overlaying additional information on the diagram here. So I can say, you know what? I want to understand what critical data elements exist in my technical lineage or my business lineage. There we go. I can see all those objects, yes, have our CDE in them. There's a candidate CDE down here. I can even then overlay other stuff like maybe I'm interested in PI classification. Okay, cool. I've got verified PI in quite a few of these tables. I can see verified not PI in some of these tables as well, and some candidates as well. This gives me a really powerful visual understanding of what my data is, how it's flowing through my organization, is it sensitive or not, really quickly and easily. And that then ties back to our CDEs, and I'll hand back to you, Chad.
Thanks, Luke. So before we go to the next section, there's just a couple of questions around business lineage, Luke. I thought we'd answer them now, assuming we're
Good
still
time.
on the topic. So some of them were, to summarize them, it's really around how is that business lineage derived, and can you include like systems that are outside of Alation itself? So I'll let you talk to that.
That's a really good question. So absolutely, you can capture both systems that are automatically connected and cataloged by Alation, but you can also capture systems that are not. And actually, I've documented that in this example here. So if we select Salesforce, we can see here as a source, Salesforce is automatically cataloged, and there's a link to the actual connector where we've cataloged Salesforce because it is a system we have a connector for. For our core banking system, this happens to be a source that, it's on a legacy mainframe. We don't have a connector for it. And for security reasons, we won't give it permission to connect to. So we don't have a technical connection, scraping metadata out of that platform. Instead, we're using a virtual data source to capture and represent that core banking system in our business lineage. So we have a number of tools that make it really easy to capture and represent both the technical and business lineage, regardless of whether we can technically connect to that source in question.
Excellent. I think that's answered the question. Thanks, Luke. So I think we can now jump on to the next topic. So let's go to that. So we've now spoken about lineage and why it's important to really understand how data flows, and the main reason for that is so we can manage the data quality risks across that. And so on the screen now is our view of, or DGX's view of, really a modern approach to implementing data quality within a business. And so the first thing to sort of mention or to highlight is it's really end to end, right? So we're really trying to make sure we're managing quality across the whole data lifecycle, from how it comes in to how it gets into the report. So we really need to have controls across that. And so on the screen, you can see we've got data validation controls as data comes in. We've got third-party assurance controls for when if there's a third party involved. We've also got data quality rules that we're writing against source systems, and then we've got modern concepts like data contracts and data observability. So I guess the key point is when it's using the lineage to really understand how the data flows, so you can then implement the right data quality controls across that, so you can ensure that your data is fit for purpose. And so when it comes to specifically understanding the health or managing the quality for your CDs, it's typically running data quality rules in the source system or the system of record where that data is mastered. And we're running rules against the kind of 6 data quality dimensions: so completeness, validity, timeliness, consistency, uniqueness, and accuracy. And so from a perspective of putting CDEs under governance, you really want to be implementing like a data quality rules for at least one for every CDE. But I'd say ideally you want at least, typically you see like at least 3 to 5 rules for each CDE, and that really gives us that comprehensive view of the quality across the different data dimensions. So you're not just stuck with, say, all completeness rules. You've got a balanced view of data quality across completeness, across validity, across consistency and accuracy, to really give you that comprehensive view of the state of your quality. And so what the thing you can do is once you have these rules and you have data quality rules, you can and you've got rules running and exceptions, you can really take that output and start thinking about building a data quality score. And really that, in the organization I've worked at, it's really best practice, and what we're trying to strive towards is really building that enterprise score that can be our key risk indicator. It can also just give us a view of the health of data across the organization. And so in the past, I've built the data quality score based on critical data elements, and I've done it I've aggregated it up. So I've taken the rules and look at the output and aggregated that into an individual score for a CDE. I've then aggregated that into a score for a domain, and then I've aggregated that into a score for the entire enterprise. And so by doing it that way, you can really give the execs a top line view of the health score of the data. But if there's any issues, you can also break that down. You can give your domain owners specific dashboards for their CDEs, and you can also break down that based on dimensions. And so I think this stuff is really powerful to bring it to life. It gives them visibility, but it's also actionable. So if you've got a data quality issue, your score is going to go down, and then you can look at where's the breakdown happening. Is it which domain is it happening, and then in the domain which CDEs are impacted, and then which for a CD what are we talking about? We're talking about we've got a completeness issue, we've got a validity issue. You can break it down. So really that's best practice when I've seen implementation of data quality score and managing data quality for CDEs. The thing I'd also mention too is that it's really crucial to have I have a federated model here. So it's not the governance team that's implementing data quality rules. You really want to move towards having your business doing that. So you want your data stewards and your data owners to have accountability for this stuff, and you really want your stewards to be coordinating. So you want them to be empowered to be writing the rules, to be managing the exceptions and the data issues, and really improving quality over time. And so, in a true federated model, that's really what we're aspiring to do. Obviously, it takes a journey to get there, and so you might start off with a hybrid model where the data governance team is hand-holding the business a little bit, but you're working towards getting them to be managing it themselves, and that's where it should be, right? Like it's their data, they're accountable. They're the ones who need to be investing in and managing that risk as they're the owners. At the end of the day, I'm the data governance team. I'm almost like a line 1B kind of thing. If that is impacted, it's not going to directly impact me. It's going to impact those data owners. So those are the people who should be responsible for managing and maintaining that quality. And so really that's probably all I'm going to mention around this managing quality. I'm going to hand over to Luke now to really take us through how you can monitor quality within Alation. So he has touched on it briefly already, but we'll get him to go through it in more detail.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. So landing back on my technical lineage, like I was showing you with those those overlays, those metadata overlays, the other thing I can do is a data quality overlay. So I can get a really nice visual representation of these data quality cards showing me, do I have any data quality issues? Yes. Do I have any upstream issues? How serious are they? And I can even navigate through those and view the data health tab and see what are the specific rules we're running against our specific assets. So I can see here I've got 3 rules. I've got a uniqueness check, a validity, and 2 different validity checks on this particular asset here. If we navigate back to our CDE, which let's go back to our customer ID CDE here. And we scroll a little bit further down the page, we can see I've got a data quality scorecard. So what I've done is I've started to aggregate up all those individual checks we've done against all the technical assets and started to summarize them up in terms of accuracy, completeness, consistency, uniqueness, and validity score. And then, of course, that comes up to a total health score, giving me a really good sense of what is the overall data quality of this particular CDE. I then obviously want to roll that up again to a domain level. So our customer ID happens to belong to our lending domain at Ag Bank. So if I navigate to my lending domain, I can see here under the lending domain, we've got our key features and key offerings as an organization. And I've got this nice simplified data quality score aggregating saying, overall, we've got some fairly high data quality across all the CDEs that belong to our lending domain. And if I roll that up again and go to my business org chart, overall, we're doing pretty good. Data quality overall is high. Yeah, there may be some individual outliers and assets, but at an aggregate level, we're doing pretty well from a data quality perspective. And that gives me a really good sense of how I'm doing as an organization, just being able to capture, my data quality against my technical assets, then being able to aggregate it up against my CDs, aggregate it up again to my domain level, and then to an organizational level. To Chad's point, that's the kind of thing that APRA is looking for, that clear understanding that you understand the technical lineage, the business lineage, which CDs you have and how critical they are, what risks are associated to them, and then from a data quality perspective, giving you that full aggregated view of data quality across the organization and your CDEs. Which kind of brings me to my conclusion. I mean, there's kind of 4 really key things when it comes to data governance and CDEs in general. It's, well, first you got to find them. Where do you find them in your organization? And Alation has a number of tools that helps you find and identify the highest priority, highest used objects in your environment, which helps you start identifying those CDEs. Once you've found them, you need to understand them. You need to engage the business. To Chad's point again, you need to having that federated model where you use the knowledge out of the business, capture that tribal knowledge of the business. With the collaboration tools Alation provides, it makes it really easy to get the business engaged in this process to help build up your understanding of what these critical data elements are and what they contain. Then you're finally starting to bring things under governance. You got your CDEs controlled, you got a CDE register, you got risks, controls documented, and starting to get your data governance checks in place too. And ultimately, what does that do? That helps you build trust in your data. People can trust that, yes, the data going into my dashboards where my key KPIs are calculated is trusted, reliable, well governed. We're dabbling in AI initiatives. I know that the data being fed into my AI models is trusted and well governed. And that's another thing we help govern too around AI data governance models. But hopefully that gives you a really good summary of how we tackle CDEs with Alation, how we help you find, understand, govern, and trust your data across your enterprise. I see there's a couple questions we can go through today. Chad, did you have any key points you wanted to add? And I'll pick out some of these questions for us to address.
No, I think you've covered it brilliantly, Luke. So let's jump to some questions. You want to choose some, and we can go through.
Okay, so At what point do you consider a CDE is governed? Chad, what would you say is sort of that point at which inflection point when you say, yes, we've got some level of governance over our CDE beginning?
Yep. So you're going to need to have it documented in your CDE register. You're going to need to have and demonstrate business and technical lineage, and you're going to need to be able to demonstrate data quality controls. So without that, you really can't say they're governed. So you really need all those things. And when you get audited, your auditors are going to be asking for those things.
A good question here from Carol. How long does it take to get value out of a tool like Alation? I know a typical implementation takes about 12 to 14 weeks to get you to both a technical and business go live. I mean, Chad, from your experience, what was it like rolling it out? Always best to hear from a customer's actual experience in terms of deploying these things.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a smart approach to that, and usually, I think it's very quickly. I'd say probably between 1 to 3 months, we really started getting value. And the way we kind of fast tracked that was there's a whole bunch of information in the organization that's lying in Jira or Confluence or everywhere or a spreadsheet or whatever. What we did is we started to bring these things. We brought the glossary into Alation. We started bringing the data dictionaries into Alation and starting to connect it all. We brought our CDEs into it. We started bringing all this information, and then it started to become valuable because it was the IP of data for the organization. So someone new coming in, they could understand like a one-on-one on data, understand how to use our data. And we also focused on when new data systems were ingested into the platform, we made sure that they were curated. So that works constant. So, but it means it's the source of truth for this new data set. How do I use it? Well, go to Alation for you to figure that out. So I think getting that working, I think can be up and running fairly quickly.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. This was a really key topic of discussion at our Sydney customer user group with other Alation customers last night, actually, talking about using Alation as that centralized place for any data knowledge across the organization. So not just governance, but also anything going on with data. What are our common terms, metric definitions, all that good stuff in one place so people can easily search and discover, okay, am I using data that has CDEs in it? Am I using data in my BI reports that has sensitive data in it? Making all that quite transparent to the organization so everyone can find and discover that is really quite empowering. I think all those things come together to making it quite easy to quickly extract value out of a platform like Alation in particular. Doreen had a good question around does Alation cover the governing business processes and AI models? So AI governance is a really interesting topic, and it's something we're rolling out capability around now. We've done, I did a webinar about that a few months back, so that might be available on the website. I think we're doing some more material at the moment. Similar to CDEs, having governance cards to document your various AI projects or even just AI tools, and then understanding what risks have been checked off against those AI products we're using, what controls have been put in place before we turn these things on. They're all really important things in terms of understanding how AI is used across the business. And not just when you're building an AI product like a chatbot for your own organization, but when you're turning on a capability too. Talking to some of our customers last night, they're doing that exact same risk assessment when they're looking at things like Copilot and enabling Copilot for their business. They need to make sure they've documented it, put appropriate risks and control checks around that to make sure people aren't feeding in sensitive company data into AI models that may not be necessarily fully governed without doing those checks and balances first ahead of time. So Alation, again, gives you a great place to capture that documentation and bring AI models under governance. And you can even start seeing things like what data is being fed into my AI models. Does that include CDEs? Does it include PI? Gives you some really powerful insights.
Carol just had a follow-up question for that. She's asking about what a governance card is.
Governance card is just a representation of like the CDE itself. So if we look here, Back to our CD here. So for customer ID, I have one governance card per CDE. It's just a template that summarizes up everything we're doing to govern the CDE. Same would go for summarize up everything we're doing to govern a AI model or product. Have a single card that represents that with links out to the other referential information to make it really easy to understand everything I need to about that model. So I've got descriptions of what it is. I've got clear ownership on the card. I've got links out to the classifications, risk controls, lineage, all that sort of information. It allows you to bring it all together on a single card for people to easily understand.
Thank you for that, Luke. There's just another new question that's come up. Some organizations are following gold and silver and bronze approach for CDE management. Any thoughts around this?
I'll probably jump in. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, you can use that approach. From my understanding, it's really the kind of the levels of governance has been implemented for a CD. So you can choose. Maybe your CDs don't all need to be gold. Like gold would mean you have quality, you've got lineage, you've got all these things, right? And then maybe some data you're happy with silver and bronze. So I think it depends on how you want to implement it. I've seen that used for data itself. So you've got bronze data, I've got silver data, I've got gold data. It means there's higher levels of governance over them. But yeah, you can use it. I don't think it hurts. What I would say is that from a regulatory perspective, it's gold. Gold is required for a CD. So there's specific things that is expected for CDs. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Unfortunately, we are on time for this session today, so thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate your time and engagement, and it's been a pleasure to share insights on mastering critical data elements. We hope you found it useful, and we will be sending out a recording of the session within the next 24 hours. Thank you for joining, everyone.